Okay, so for your first video here, we're going to discuss angles and transversals and how they relate to parallel lines. So for example 1, you have in the figure P is parallel to Q, so this symbol here means parallel, P is parallel to Q. The measure of angle 1 is 107, so whenever they give you something, I usually just write that in. And the measure of angle 11 is 48. So angle 11 is labeled over here, it's 48. And it wants you to find the measure of each angle. So you've got, this is P and this is Q, and this symbol here indicates that these two lines are parallel. And then you have these two transversals. So you have this transversal going this way that cuts across P and Q that are parallel, and then you have this transversal going this way. So it's up to you which angle you want to start with as far as figuring out all of the other angles. So if measure of angle 1 is 107, then vertical angles are equivalent. So if angle 1 is 107, 7 is directly across from it, so it's vertical angle. It would also have to be 107. The measure of angle 2, the two angles here have to add up to 180 degrees because they're on a line. So the straight line, the degree of a straight line is 180. So if you've got two angles forming a line, they have to add up to 180 degrees. So if you do 180 minus 107, you would get 73. And I'll list all these in a minute. I usually just label them first. And I should have made this just a little bit bigger because I don't have room here. But angle 2 and 8 are also vertical, so they have to be equal, or you can think of it as these two angles make a line which is 180 degrees, or these two make a line which is 180 degrees. So angle 8 also has to be 73. Let's see if I write small enough. So that takes care of those four. And then if you move up to here, so you've got several different angles that you can use. You have corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, whatever you want to use really. So corresponding angles would be that they're in the same place. So these two lines are parallel, so angle 1 corresponds to angle 3 because they're in the same place. So angle 1 and 3, the measurements have to be the same, since as how it told you that P and Q are parallel. So this transversal would make those corresponding angles equal. Another thing you can use is that alternate interior angles have to be equal. So if you look on the inside of your two parallel lines, that would be these angles here, 2, 7, 3, and 6. Alternate interior angles, so they alternate sides of the transversal. So 7 alternates with 3, so they would have to be equal, which would give you the 107. So either way, angle 3 has to be 107. For angle 4, you can say that it corresponds to angle 2, so they have to be equal. You can also say that 3 and 4 are on a line, they have to add up to 180 degrees. You can also say, just like with alternate interior angles that go this way, you have alternate exterior angles. So 8 is on the outside of the P here, and 4 is on the outside of the Q, and they're on the opposite sides of transversal. So 8 and 4 are alternate exterior angles. 1 and 5 are your other alternate exterior angles. They have to be equal. So 8 has to equal 4, so the degree would be 73, or like I said, it corresponds with 2, so it would have to be 73. So there's several reasons why angle 4 would have to be 73. Same thing goes for angles 5 and 6. You have either alternate exteriors. For number 5, you have 107 out here, so 5 has to be 107. You can also use vertical angles here. 3 and 5 are vertical. You can also use corresponding. It corresponds with 7, so either any way you do it, it gets 107. If they add up to 180 still. For 6, same thing. You have several different reasons. It's vertical with 4, so it has to be 73. It corresponds with 8, so it has to be 73. It's an alternate interior angle to 2, so it also has to be 73. So that takes care of all those. So if we move down here to this other transversal, so we have this transversal cutting across P and Q that are still parallel. It told us that the measure of angle 11 was 48. So you can fill in whatever you want to fill in to start with. If you use vertical angles here, 11 and 13 are vertical, so 13 also has to be 48. If you use the fact that these are on the same line, they have to add up to 180 degrees, 12 and 13. If you do 180 minus 48, you would get 132. And then 12 and 14 are vertical, so this would be 132. Or again, you can use the fact that they're on the same line, they have to add up to 180. For 9, 10, 16, and 15, whichever one you want to do first. If we do 10 first, I guess. You have 10 is alternate interior angles with 14, or it corresponds to 12. So either way, they have to add up, they have to be the same. It has to be the same as 14 or the same as 12, which are the same. So this is 132. Also, one that's not commonly used is that these two angles, 10 and 11, would have to add up to 180, but we usually use vertical corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, whatever the case is. For this one, for 15, you have alternate interior with 11, so it has to be 48, or it corresponds to 13, so it still has to be 48. Or 10 and 15 have to add up to 180, so whichever way you want to, whatever explanation you want to use. When you have a homework like this, as long as you provide one explanation that's true, that's fine. You don't have to list all of the different explanations. For 16, 10 and 16 are vertical, so it's 132. It also corresponds to 14, so it's 132. It's alternate exterior with 12, so it's 132. So lots of options there. And 9 as well, I don't really have enough room, but I'll draw an arrow. 9 is vertical to 15, so it has to be 48, or it corresponds to 11, so it has to be 48, or it is alternate exterior with 13, so it has to be 48. So let me just put it out here. So that's 48. And then finally, for the measure of angle 17, so this one's a little bit different because we're going to get into triangles later. So this is just to see if you remember, for triangles, the degrees of a triangle has to add up to 180. So if you know 8 and 9, you know that 73 and 48. The triangle angles have to add up to 180. So you can do 180 minus 48 minus 73, and you will get the measure of angle 17, which is 59. So just to list all those with an explanation, let's do the measure of angle 1 was given, so we'll start with 2. Measure of angle 2 is 73, and we did that by doing 180 minus 70, not minus 73, minus 107 to get 73. So I'll just put it in parentheses what we did. This is a linear pair, is what it's called, because they're on a line, so it's a linear pair. The measure of angle 3 is 107, and like I said, there's a lot of different reasons you can give that. I'm just going to do alternate interior angles. The measure of angle 4, and you don't necessarily have to go in order, but whatever. The measure of angle 4 is 73. Which, if you hadn't done 7 and 8, you would have to use. I guess I should have went out of order. I was listing them in order. And when I explained it, I did it out of order. I did 1, 2, 7, and 8 first. So the measure of angle 4, because it matches 8, you can use alternate exterior angles, but you'd have to figure that out first. So I'm just going to write 1 down. I guess I should have listed them out of order in the order I explained them. But we have them all labeled up here so you can follow along. The measure of angle 5 is 107. You can use vertical angles or alternate exterior angles or whatever you choose. Measure of angle 6 is 73. Again, you can use vertical angles or alternate interior angles, or so I'm just going to pick one. So on your homework, you can pick what rule you want to use when you do homework. Measure of angle 7 is 107. If we use vertical angles. Measure of angle 8 is 73. Again, you can use vertical angles or linear pair, doesn't matter. Measure of angle 9, since I'm listing them in order, I'll just keep going in order. Measure of angle 9 is 48. And originally it was given, it gave you the measure of angle 11 was 48, 9 and 11 correspond, so I'll do corresponding angles for this one since we haven't used that one yet. Measure of angle 10 is 132, which is, you can do linear pair, so they had to add up to 180 degrees. Measure of angle 11 is 48, which was given. Let me just write given here since we have them all. Let me add in measure of angle 1 too, since you can't see that anymore. Measure of angle 1 was 107, which was given. Measure of angle 12 is 132, using linear pair. So they had to add up to 180. About to run out of paper here. Measure of angle 13 is 48. If you want to use vertical angles. Oops. Let me just write over here. Measure of angle 14 is 132. Again, you can use vertical angles or linear pair or alternate interior angles. Measure of angle 15 is 48. Using whatever rule you pick as long as it's correct. Let's do alternate interior angles on that one. Measure of angle 16 is 132. I'll do vertical angles on that one. Angles, not C's. And then the measure of angle 17 we got because the triangle degrees in the triangle has to add up to 180, so we did 180 minus 73 minus 48, which gave us 59. So 180 degrees in a triangle. So that takes care of all of those. It kind of takes a minute, just because I relisted them. So on the homework, you could figure it out and list them. And like I said, you can pick as long as it's a valid rule. You don't have to list. If there's 3 different choices, you don't have to list all 3 choices. So for this example, you have this triangle, and you want to find x and y. So in this triangle here, you have these 2 parallel lines. So you can think of it as you have these 2 parallel lines. So if you wanted to, you could extend them on out. Didn't match up very good. I'm not very good at drawing. So you could extend them on out like this. And so basically they're being cut by these transversals here. So you could extend those on too, so that it looks more like one of these where you have lines and transversals. But this is the same thing, it's just in the triangle. So you want to find x and y. So what has to be true? You have, if these lines are parallel and they're cut by this transversal here, you would have this angle corresponds to this angle. Corresponding angles have to be equal, which means 4x minus 5 has to equal 3x plus 11. Solve the equation, you'll find x, and this is because, like I said, corresponding angles. Corresponding angles. So if you solve this, if we subtract 3x, 4x minus 3x gives us x equals, and add 5, 11 plus 5 is equal to 16. So x is 16. Then to find what is this actual angle, then you have 4 times x. So 4 times 16, if I've got room, let me just do it this way and draw an arrow. We've got 4 times 16 minus 5 is equal to 59. So we need that because in order to find this angle, the y, these 2 are a linear pair, so they have to add up to 180. So 4x minus 5 plus 3y plus 1, they have to add up to 180, so we need to know what is this actual angle to do that. So it's 59 degrees by plugging in x. So we have 3y plus 1 plus this angle here, which we said was 59, has to equal 180 because they're a linear pair. They form a line. So if you solve this, you'd have 3y, 1 plus 59 is 60, equals 180. So we have 3y, 180 minus 60 is 120, so y is 40. And it doesn't ask you to go through and find the actual angles, so we don't actually have to plug them in. You can if you want to. It just asks you to find x and y, but like I said, for this one you have to plug in this x because you need to know what that angle is so that you can do the linear pair. So x is 16, y is 40. For the last example, is P parallel to Q? That's the question. So it gives you this P and Q, and it's cut by a transversal. It tells you this is 115, this is 115, 65, 65, and so on and so forth. So the question is P parallel to Q? For this one, the answer would be yes. And the reason is your alternate exterior angles, so these are equal, these are equal. Your alternate interior angles, 65 and 65, 115, 115 are equal. So let me just make a list here. Alternate exterior angles are equal. I'm just doing a bunch of symbols. Alternate interior angles are equal. Also corresponding angles, 115, 115, 65, 65, these all corresponding angles are equal. So yes, because all that is true. Then for the part B, it says, are these parallel? P and Q, you've got this 95 and this is 100. So the answer here would be no, because these are alternate interior angles. In order for P and Q to be parallel, these would have to be the same. So you would say no, the alternate interior angles are not equal. And for them to be parallel, they have to be equal. So that's all for that video. So your homework, your first homework is actually going to cover a couple other things, and then you'll see this one on your second homework. But I wanted to put this video since it relates to what you have to look at first. So you'll use this video for your second actual assignment that you turn in. But if you have any questions, please send me a message.